You have to live for yourself and make sure you are living your fullest life in what you are meant to do. The people who are meant to be with you will come. And by being your fullest self, that ripples out so that you can demonstrate you can make decisions solely for you that actually benefit everyone else, right?
Hello and welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm Brittany Cates, your host on this incredible journey of career transformation. Get ready for inspiring stories, valuable insights, and a roadmap to shift your mindset towards a more fulfilling professional life. In each episode, we explore the remarkable journeys of individuals who made a career change, offering motivation, strategies, and the confidence to pursue your dreams. Whether you're feeling stuck, contemplating a change, or just seeking a dose of inspiration, this podcast is your weekly companion. Tune in every Thursday as we uncover the secrets to shifting your day job. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Shift Your Day Job podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and I'm so glad that you're here today. Before I jump into introducing my guest, I'd like to ask you a question. Are you ready to make a career change, but you just feel stuck, like you don't know the next steps to take in order to make it happen? Well, I have a brand new free resource called the Career Transition Blueprint, and it's 12 questions that will lead you to not only determining where you are in your career change journey, but it will also help you figure out what your next right step is. So if you're interested in getting some clarity around what actions you can take to start moving towards the career of your dreams, please connect with me on Instagram at Shift Your Day Job or go to my website, brittanycates.com, and you can access your free career transition blueprint from there. I look forward to helping you take your first or your next step towards shifting your day job. Today, I'm chatting with Heather Stewart, who has gone through an incredible career transformation from being a chartered accountant to becoming a massage therapist, a personal trainer, and now a business coach. Her journey is wild, and it all started with some pretty serious wake-up calls, including a health scare and a stroke that completely changed the way she looked at her life and career. We dive into how she broke free from what society expected of her, discovered what truly makes her happy, and how she found resilience through some really tough times. If you're feeling stuck or uncertain about your next move, this conversation is packed with insights and inspiration. Please join me in welcoming Heather Stewart to the podcast. Hi, Heather. Welcome to the Shift Your Day Job podcast. How are you today?
I'm amazing. Thank you. I'm super excited for our conversation.
Great. Yeah, I am too, because it sounds like you have had quite a bit of career shifts throughout your life. So if you don't mind starting with what have you done in the past and how did you get to where you are now?
Right.
What are you up to today?
Yeah, this is a good story. As I'm going to segue a little bit, but when I had a client, I was a massage. I'll get to the massage therapist part, but I was a massage therapist, and I told this woman that I was massaging what my previous career was, and she almost jumped off the table. So she was so shocked. So my first career was I was a chartered accountant CPA. I was an auditor. I did accounting. I did all those things that for some people, it really lights them up. It makes them excited. And I was not one of those people. I just happened to be pretty good at it, right? And it was funny. I did it for 15 years. And the last job that I was working, I was a senior director in this $1 billion public traded company. And the mail guy would always stop by my office and talk to me. And he said, "Are you sure that you're in the accounting department? Because you're not like most accountants. I guess most of the directors wouldn't sit and chat with the mail guy." I just thought he was super interesting. One day I was sitting at my desk. This is a pivotal point. I was sitting at my desk. I had the radio on behind me. I was trying to balance this budget. Head office wanted another $1 million. The department said, "We don't have any more." And I'm just trying to find $1 million. Just a normal day, right? And the radio behind me was commenting on the owner of the company. So it's publicly traded, but the majority shareholder is one family. Was like how many billions of dollars he was worth. And my head just went, he doesn't need another $1 million. Really? This is stupid. And I had that moment where I'm like, if I'm not really jacked to find this and excited about this, there's something not aligned here. So that kind of I had that moment of, am I in the right job? And strangely, not strangely, I had been actually taking yoga after work because of stress. I was working 12, 14-hour days, had lots of demands on me, had staff. So I would race to yoga after work to de-stress, right? I've got to get to yoga. And one day I was driving to yoga and I was thinking about all the things I had to do. And I was driving through this really busy intersection and there was a pedestrian in front of me. And I'm like, what are you doing in front of me? Get out of the road. You're going to get run over by a car. I looked up and my light was red. And I thought, oh my God, I'm the one who's the idiot here. I'm yelling at this pedestrian. I'm amazed I didn't kill that person or I get killed myself because this was a really busy intersection and I was driving full on didn't even slow down through this red light. And when I got to yoga, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like I am stressing to fit this role and I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to do my best, but it wasn't working. I was like not healthy and I almost ran over somebody. Something's wrong. So I decided to quit my job, which some people would say was insane because I had a pension. I had all health insurance. I had an amazing career. On the surface, if you looked at it on social media, I had reached what you were supposed to reach, but it sucked for me. So I actually quit my job. One of my friends was actually going to have me committed to an asylum because they actually thought I was crazy. I'm like, really? Just because I'm quitting my job? We've been trained very early on that you get your career and you keep going and you don't stop. And I had suddenly said, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And it wasn't because of sometimes women do it because they decide they want to have kids. I was just doing it because I didn't want to do it anymore. And I went to India for 3 months and traveled around and did whatever I wanted to do. And when I came back, I started teaching yoga. I had taken a course right before I went to India on how to teach yoga. So I said, I'm going to try and teach yoga. So I was teaching yoga. I became a personal trainer. So I went from like corporate, sit at a desk all day to fitness, wellness, and you say two different sides. And I went back to school for 2 years to become a massage therapist. So doing that was amazing. Massage therapy was funny. I had a client once say to me, because I had physio tape on my wrist. I said, oh, I'm just having a little wrist problem. And he said, oh, massage therapy is really hard on the body. I said, so was sitting at a desk. Yeah. So I was doing all this wellness stuff for people's physical wellness. And it was amazing. But people kept coming to me for advice. And I'm thinking, I would answer their questions because I had all this background in business. This is when I started business coaching. I had all these wellness people coming to me asking me questions. So I said, why don't I just help you learn how to run your business? So I started business coaching kind of on the side of personal training, and I had my own yoga studio. Now, let me tell you, when you decide to change your career from a job where your life is dictated to an entrepreneur, that's a big shift you have to make. And some people succeed at it and some people give up and go back to having a job. And some people are meant for it and some people aren't meant for it, which is fine. If you decide you're not meant for it and go back, that's fine. But I had to learn, like I thought I knew a lot the corporate world about business. But what I didn't know, I learned when I was running my yoga studio. So in all there, I had my own yoga studio. But I started business coaching because I had figured out a whole bunch of things. And then I know this is a long story, but I've had a long life so far. In 2021, during COVID, I had a stroke and I was in the emergency room for 3 days because there was no beds in the hospital and no one could visit me because of COVID. So I was alone over Halloween in a downtown inner city hospital. It was very interesting. All of the people. And it was my 3-day silent retreat gift from the universe where I sat back and said, okay, I couldn't see, I had double vision, so I couldn't see it to escape into our social media or scrolling. So I was just sitting there. I couldn't even read a book. And I was listening to the conversations going on outside my little cubicle and contemplating the universe and thinking, okay, so I understand how the corporate mind thinks. I know a lot about physical wellness and I know a lot about business, but those are really small pieces. In the grand scheme of looking at someone holistically, those are just pieces of a life. So to really help people, I'm having a stroke, right? I'm like, yeah, the stroke's fine. The doctor's got it. I'm good. And let's figure out my next phase of helping people. I realized that what I needed to do was expand what I was doing to encompass the whole person. I retired from massage therapy because I did it for 14 years and I thought, get out on the head when you're ahead before your arthritis gets bad. So I retired from massage therapy and I started focusing fully on helping people really figure out what do they need in their lives to thrive. It could be career related. I know that you help people lots with that. It could be physical related. I still teach yoga and I still have all that knowledge of the body. If I can't help you, I have tons of resources. I come with someone, I figure out what we need, then we figure out what to do. Do you need one of the people that I know? Or can I help you navigate that yourself? So it's like your physical health, your emotional health, the community of people around you, your job, your financial health, which I know a lot about, and then your spirit. What makes your heart sing? And if your heart's not singing, let's figure out why that is. What layers of obligation have you put on yourself that aren't yours? You know what I mean? So that's a long story to tell you where I've been, the
Yeah.
travels I've been on.
Amazing. There's a lot in there that I can relate to, and I imagine my listeners can relate to as well. The going from corporate to yoga and wellness and that like stark transition is something that I experienced as well. I was teaching for so long, then I transitioned into the world of interior design and sales in furniture and accessories store. And
Right.
I remember sitting in the back room getting training and looking around and being like, this is so different
Right.
from what I've ever done. And I was so excited about it.
Good that you're excited because some people get there and go, oh my God, this is so different. It's too scary. And they go back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I had definitely gotten to that point where I just knew I was ready to leave teaching at that time. And so I was looking forward to
Yeah.
the new. But yeah, definitely we all experience it differently.
And I think that probably the self-discipline of being a teacher, because I did teach a little while in the shiatsu school. I taught business, big surprise, and communications. I think the discipline you have to have as a teacher helps you when you change careers, especially if you go into something that's demands more of you to be independent, if you understand what I mean, like more self-directed
Yeah.
because I've had clients who are so used to being fully directed that when they go into even just a work from home type situation, they have trouble with that discipline of not having someone tell you what to do every day, right? And
Yeah.
that mind shift to yes, I am the boss. So she said to me one day, well, if I'm the boss, then I could just give myself the reward for doing the work without doing the work. I said, this is true. But then what is that saying about your responsibility towards yourself, right? Which I think is where some people struggle. So did you struggle with that transition or you were fine?
The more
Being
independent.
yeah.
Yes and no. I feel in it depends on the situation. I think especially with work and I am able to, okay, this is what I need to do now and stay on top of it because I feel some sort of accountability. But in other places in my life, when it's just accountable to myself, I'm not always as
Right.
disciplined.
I think
Um,
that's where some, not even just in entrepreneurship, but in life, one of the challenges that people have is being accountable to themselves, which is why there's personal trainers and coaches and all of these people to help you if you don't have that intrinsic thing that you've learned to keep yourself accountable to yourself. And I don't know where people get it. Are they born with it? Do they learn it? Are they modeled it by their parents or community? There's a formula that would be super handy to have.
yeah. My theory is it's learned or modeled and you adopt the habits that you internalize growing up, that you saw growing up. So
Yeah. Look how many books are do it like the self-help. I remember Atomic Habits. Do this. And he just seemed to that was like his mindset was I'm going to do this every day. Where some mindsets are like, are you kidding me? The same thing every day would kill me.
yeah.
So finding a way
Yeah.
to be accountable to yourself and understanding how your brain works.
Yeah. It comes down to that self-awareness piece. And I feel like I'm pretty self-aware. And yet there are times when I know what I'm doing, but I'm still not
Yeah.
changing it. Like I'm still not shifting it. So
Oh yeah,
I
I have
think,
those.
yeah, I think it's human nature. And obviously we have strengths in different areas of our lives and other areas that we need to work on. Like my career was something that was so, well, still is such a big part of my life. And
my day to day and it was such a top priority for me, that is where I feel I'm more disciplined than
Right.
maybe some other things that like health and wellness, right? Like I ebbs and flows more than,
I used to do a presentation. I still do it every now and then. I did it every month for a little while, helping people see that perhaps their overwhelm and stress was coming from that kind of self awareness, self accountability. Because if I took them through an exercise where they identified what they said they valued most, like what were their values? Some people said family, health, friendships. Then where are you putting your priorities? And their priorities would be on something like my job. So there's a disconnect there between what you prioritize, but what you say your number one values are. And knowing that we do have to, at this point, at stage in our, it was Michael Bernard Beckwith. He calls it coin of the realm. We need to earn coin of the realm to have food and shelter and the things that make life happy and joyful. Not that money creates happiness, but things that create ease. But prioritizing that over top of the things we think are important, you can still earn money and have your family be important. And I had this client actually, or a woman on my podcast once who was a doctor. And it was interesting. The podcast was to talk about how she was helping people. And we ended up having a coaching session in the podcast because what was happening was she had become an independent doctor because she found that in the clinics, she wasn't able to help people as much as she wanted. But that transition into entrepreneurship, she was working lots and lots of hours. And she was doing that because she wanted to provide for her children and her family. But her children and her family were saying, we don't care how much money you earn. We want to spend time with you. And she was missing bedtimes and she was stressing out. I'm like, okay, work or family, these two can live together happily, but you have to get a little more equilibrium going on there. And it's just so interesting how my husband and I say this to each other all the time. You are the cause of your suffering. It's a very Buddha thing to say. If you're stressing about something, you're the person who can change it.
Yeah.
Very likely, right? It's just finding that step forward.
Yeah. And I think it relates to what you're talking about in regards to being so stressed out that you had to find an outlet. And yet that was the thing you could change, right? I am so stressed out. Oh, I can leave this job, right?
Right?
I don't have to do this. And the fact that I thought it was funny how your friend was like, you need to be committed. Like, how dare you leave this job? And then you mentioned shortly after that, some women leave to start a family and how acceptable that is,
Right?
right? No one would institutionalize a woman for leaving her job because she wanted to start a family.
No.
And yet here you are, that's not your goal. You are just choosing something different. And it's
And
not okay, apparently, to some people. And
it's
to
not
have
right.
that realization of, okay, whoa, wait a second. Do I accept this as like the societal perspective or do I not? And if I don't, then I can leave on my terms. I can do something different. And it really is that mindset shift of and being self aware and reevaluating your values and beliefs and taking that next step, that
Right.
action piece.
And isn't it like it is super interesting as a woman, especially that it is so acceptable for you to decide not to have a career and just not just and go and have babies, but not just to change your mind and go do something different. And if you think about how we've been conditioned, that it's almost like you're conditioned that this was what you decided to do. You have to stay in it. You know, that you've made your bed, now lie in it. I'm like, no, I can remake it. I can take the sheets off and put new ones on. Watch this.
Yeah.
And what happens, and I remember this a long time ago, and I can't remember where I heard this, that when you're trying to make a change in your life, like if you say, oh, this isn't working for me, I need to shift, like even something as easy as I think I must have heard it in a weight loss clinic or something. When you're trying to change something about yourself, part of your challenge is your community of people around you, your relationships, and not saying that they're trying to block you or they don't want you to be happy. But there's an unwritten agreement on how you will be in the relationship and how they will be in the relationship. And by disrupting that, by changing yourself, you disrupt that agreement. And that causes them to say, wait, if you change, then I have to change. I don't want to change. I want to stay the way I am. I like it the way it was. Let's stop. Let's go back. and they will maybe unconsciously try to sabotage you, like my friend who was going to have me committed. You can't go out and have a new life because then I have to admit that maybe I'm not happy. So I'm going to have you put in the asylum just to make sure everything stays the same. Like,
Yeah.
okay, hold on. And you can see it when people get divorced, when people make major life changes. As you shift, it disrupts all of those relationships. And the people who can navigate change and accept you as you are and as you're changing will stay. And the people who can't will fall away. And some people won't change because they're afraid they're going to get kicked off the island. They're afraid to make that change because it's going to disrupt other people. But I would say you're not living for other people.
Yeah.
You have to live. That's why my podcast is called Back to Me. You have to live for yourself and make sure you are living your fullest life in what you were meant to do. The people who are meant to be with you will come. And by being your fullest self, that ripples out so that you can demonstrate you can make decisions solely for you that actually benefit everyone else, right?
Right.
So by me not being an accountant anymore, I probably saved a whole lot of people a whole lot of grief.
Yeah.
I've stepped into my role of, no, I wasn't supposed to count numbers and money for rich people all the time. I was supposed to help people who are stressed and lost find their way. That's what I'm supposed to do. And I feel that, like, when I say that, I can feel it is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. So by stepping out of the traditional, what societal norms are, to this is and I didn't find it right away. It took me a little bit of time, but by being brave enough and finding that I had to find the inner courage, because the coaching wasn't really a big thing back then. This inner courage to keep taking these steps forward. And then the people who aligned with me came and started helping me and supporting me. And then I just keep moving further and further forward. And that's helping more people than if I stayed in the role that I was in. Now, the people who are in those roles, who are meant for those roles, I love them because they are taking care of that part of the world. Will I take care of this part of the world?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that mention of, like, you didn't get there right away, but as you took more and more action, you recognized the clues that led you to this place of, this is who I serve and this is what I wanted, the difference I want to make in the world.
And I actually was just editing the chapter in a book that I'm contributing to, and I'm making a comment about when I started making those changes. It wasn't like when I made that first change and left my job, it wasn't like angels started singing and everything was perfect, because I was still finding my way. That continues to happen still now. Like, I continue to find new things that enhance what I'm doing. So I feel like there's not an endpoint, and I don't want there to be an endpoint, because endpoint means that I've finished this lifetime. Then going on to the next one. I don't plan on ending anytime soon.
Yeah.
So it's like that continual discovery and curiosity, and what else will help, and what else will help. And I've just kept moving that forward for myself and learning. And some things that I started with they've become, I'm complete with those. And those helped me through this section. And now I feel like I'm done with that and I can go on to the next thing. Sometimes we hold on to those things too tight because we don't want things to change. But if you know that life is going to change constantly, why not embrace it and choose the change?
Yeah, I like that.
Ooh, I like that. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, I think because the reason we don't like change is because it's unfamiliar and it's scary and we want to control, right? And yet, if you choose the change, that is a form of controlling the change, right?
Or at least choose the trajectory, choose the next step. So I'm an Akashic Records reader as well. Something new I've added to my itinerary of things. And the record keepers, if people don't know what it is, you can just go Google Akashic Records. But the record keepers, I hear them often say, you don't need to know the full path or the end zone. You just need to know the next step. So you choose the next step and we'll take care of the rest. And I'm like, wow, that's really smart. I've heard them say it to more than one person. So I'm like, yeah, they're probably talking to me as well. So choose your next step and trust that after that, your next step will appear. And if the step you take maybe isn't the ideal one, because nothing's in a straight line, you say, oh, this one kind of worked, but next I'm going to go over this way a little bit, over that way a little bit. And just know that eventually all that tangled web that you're walking will become clear when you look back.
Absolutely.
Me, where I am now, I can look back and go, oh, that's why I was doing this and this. And I'm not doing this anymore, but I understand why, like, even the accounting, like the accounting side of me still, I still call on that knowledge and that experience regularly to help me in my current day-to-day life. It's just not the career that I want. So choosing your next step, choosing your change without attaching a necessary outcome on it. Expect good, but don't expect good, but don't expect I'm going to have X.
Don't expect perfection or
Don't expect
exaction. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Something about you talking just,
Are you okay?
yeah. I'm just like processing it like, why am I crying?
Because something in you heard something, I don't even remember what I was saying, but something in you heard something that said, listen to what she just said. And for me, I think as a society, we try to hide tears because we think they're weak. I think that tears are are a sign of strength because you're allowing some emotion to come up to you to give you the information that you need, and then you release it. And also think of pressure cookers. When I was in India, everybody cooks with pressure cookers. Psh, psh. It makes this noise. Those old ones, as tears are your pressure release valve.
I know.
Yes.
It's like we avoid it so much. And then once we do it, you feel so light and feel like,
Right?
oh, okay.
Oh,
Process
that's
that. And
so
I
much better.
feel good now.
Yeah. Grieving is an important part of life. Whatever, even small griefs like, oh, I didn't get that job. You can grieve that. I had a client who retired and she didn't give herself time to grieve that she had decided to move to a new career. And it messed with her for about a year, trying to get her on track till she finally recognized and acknowledged she did miss it, even though she didn't want to go do it. So it's okay to grieve it. I'm also a painter. Every time I sell a painting, I'm like, bye, painting. Love you. See you later, maybe. But you have to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. When you said she retired but didn't grieve it, I think some people like don't like there are certain milestones in life that are just expected, right? And nobody really talks about the fact that it's change. And so being missing it or grieving it or whatever, feeling sad is part of it. And nobody really talks about that part.
You're supposed to be happy when you retire,
Yeah.
right? But what if you are happy and sad? We don't talk about you can be both, right? So she was happy, but she was sad and she wasn't letting herself be sad. I'm like, be sad. You loved she was a professor in college and she'd be sad that you're not helping those students. Be sad that you miss their bright, shiny faces and how much you are helping them transform. And be happy that you're out of the stuff that bugged you about it. So,
Right, yeah.
yeah, permission to grieve, friends.
Yeah. And that can apply to a career change. Like you, especially making such a stark change, similar to you and I, like allowing yourself, giving yourself the permission to miss pieces of it, even though
Oh,
you
yeah.
knew as a whole that wasn't where you were meant to stay for your whole life. You know what I mean? Taking what you learned. And like you said, you're still using those skills and how that experience has played into that path that you took where people are like, help me with this, help me with that, because you have this background, right? And so it's never going to waste. And again, being able to look back and see, okay, what was I really good at? And how can I use that here now? And what are the things I didn't like? And I can leave them there and I don't have to do that anymore.
Super powerful if you can get a handle on that. Like, I love the camaraderie. And I still actually go to dinner a couple times a year with my old workmates from corporate, even though it's been like 20 years, because I still like hanging out with them and finding out what's going on and hearing the latest and greatest. But I don't need to go into the office every day and stress about budgets.
Exactly.
It's amazing when you get a handle on what makes your heart sing and what makes you feel fulfilled and valued. And have you heard of that? Loved.
Ikigai?
Yeah, that's it. My
Yeah.
Japanese is terrible.
I don't know
When
if
you
I'm
can,
saying it, but yeah.
I'll buy it. I'll buy it. Like that little sweet spot in the center, right? Where what you do is you like it and people pay you for it and you're lit up by like all of those little circles joining. When you can find that sweet spot, then for some people, life might seem too easy. And if you're used to suffering, you might sabotage yourself, right? Have you heard of the book, The Big Leap?
Yes.
Yes. The upper limit problem.
Yes. It's like as soon as it's like this threshold of, I can only be this happy And then if I'm not allowed, I'm not allowed. How do I?
Or you sabotage yourself before you because you think bad is gonna happen. It's, "Oh my gosh, I'm doing really well. Something bad's gonna happen, so I better do it to myself."
Yes. And then that energy, like, yeah,
I thought that book was
might
brilliant.
ring. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you it's by Gay Hendricks. Even if you just read it and go, "Oh, that was interesting," it plants that little subconscious seed,
Yeah.
I think sometimes, where when you're doing something and you recognize that it's not really aligned with what you want, you can go, "Wait a minute, am I doing this to myself?
Yes.
Why am I doing that?"
Yeah. And
Right?
it reminds me of, I want to say, an existential crisis or like a midlife crisis. Like I read somewhere recently that the reason why people go through midlife crises is because they've been doing what they're supposed to do for so long. And suddenly they realize, hey, wait, I'm not happy. Like, what's going on? And
Right.
that's what sparks the change and the seemingly like
Ir
drastic
irrational
change.
that
Yeah.
irrational change they've made. And it's funny, we call it midlife because when I had that one where I left corporate, I was only 37, maybe I was 38, I can't remember. I'm like, "This isn't midlife. I'm not even 40 yet. I just don't
Mhm.
wanna be here anymore." Interestingly, one of my friends, she had her midlife crisis when she was 50. She had a successful real estate business, and she said, "I don't wanna do this anymore." And she sold it and went to Europe to become a rock singer. And she did. And she came back 10 years later. She said, "Yeah, I lived my life as a rock singer. What'll I do now?" Like
Yeah.
she was just, that was what she always wanted to do. Took her till 50 to go, "Okay, I got to do it or life will end and I won't have done it." So don't regret not doing that thing.
And there's a great example of it's never too late. Who thinks that a 50-year-old could become a rock star? Granted, there are still 50-year-old rock stars, but they started when they were,
When they were like 18.
Yeah, yeah. So
She just
case in
posted a
point.
picture this week of her at a German music festival on the big screen. I'm like, "Oh my God, look, she's on a big screen singing." So cool.
That's so cool. It just makes me think of, I went to like a musical review a few months back, and one of the gals that was performing, she's a Broadway, like she's very successful in Broadway. She was, I think, an accountant, and
Right?
she left and she went to pursue her Broadway dreams. And she's amazing. Her voice is amazing. And you would never guess just because how good she is.
You don't know what people's secret dreams are unless they let them out and start pursuing them. Like I know an 80-year-old, like I guide kayak trips in Georgian Bay, which is part of Lake Huron. Like I have 80-year-olds coming out to learn to kayak and camp. I'm like, "Wow, good on you. Let's
Yeah.
go." I've known 80 and 90-year-old. Actually, I've talked to an 80-year-old on my podcast who's going back to school to get her master's degree. I'm like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." Because I think when we're younger, we say, "Oh, you're so old." We see it as being old and just maybe biding your time or something or just sitting in the rocking chair telling stories. But some people are still driven to keep learning and keep expanding and keep doing things, which is what she's doing. Her plan is to create massive change in the health system in Australia. She's got all these plans. She said, "I can't tell you what they are yet." I'm like, "Okay," but I think she'll do it.
Yeah. Sorry. Sometimes
That's okay. I
how
do
do
it
I
too.
say it? It makes me think of how you never feel how old you are. Like you
Yeah.
never feel the age you actually are. And that's really what it is. It's like outsiders can say, oh, that's an 80-year-old person. They could never because I have this whatever
Yeah.
belief. And yet, as that 80-year-old person, I'm sure she doesn't see herself as like that old and incapable of, and she's allowing herself to still have the dreams and the goals, because you never actually feel the age that you are, and you
You
realize that more
never
and
do.
more as you age.
Yeah. We always make fun of guys and we're like, guys never grow up. But I don't know that anybody ever, there's probably some people who are their age before they even reach their age. You know how some people seem older when they're young? But my husband always teases me. So I'm 58 and he says, "You act like a teenager." I'm like, "I am a teenager, aren't I?" I still feel like I'm a 19. And my body doesn't do all the things I could do when I was 19. In some ways, it does more because I'm in better shape. than I was when I was 19. But I still, in my head, I'm like, still this, wow, look at this. Wow, look at this. And I think it's okay to be a different age in your head, to be younger and to still be excited to see the world and to do all the things. And even if you have to modify them for your physical age, that doesn't mean that you can't do them, right? I think it's fabulous. I teach chair yoga to 90-year-olds every week. And I'm like, you guys are killing it. They still want to do yoga. They've just modified it because they can't get up and down off the floor as easily. I'm like, okay, no problem. Let's figure it out.
Giving yourself permission, not setting limits, and where we really are just children in an adult body, in like a older body.
Yeah.
Like we're all learning, right? Like we're always learning, we're always growing and changing. And the more experience you get, it changes your perspective and the way that you see things and approach things in the world. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we're not still that teenager that
I'm
we're
just a
all
teenager
those
with more
parts.
experience.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's awesome.
Can you talk about like any other challenges that might stick out in your mind during any one of your career shifts
Any one of my career shifts?
where it was a challenge, but you were able to be resilient through that?
Yeah. So I think of a few. So I did have my own yoga studio for 10 years. And it's a challenge when you own your own bricks and mortar to keep that flow of new clients coming through the door. I also ran my massage business out of there and my personal training business. Like I could run it all out of that one location. And my apartment was attached to it. Double bonus. A challenge came. We were 9.5 years in when my landlord came to me and said, "We're taking your space back." That was a nice way of saying we're terminating your lease and kicking you out because they had decided to partner with the condominium corporations. Our city has got condos popping up all over the place. I don't know who's living in them because there seem to be more condos than people, but they're popping up everywhere. So all of these smaller businesses are being driven out. So I had that momentary, it lasted a moment. It's, oh my God, my life is over. Like my businesses, all of my businesses are affected. My home is affected. So I'm homeless and I'm businessless. I'm like, what the heck do I do with this? Fortunately or unfortunately, I was actually out in Georgian Bay guiding a kayak trip when I got the call. So I had no choice. I couldn't do anything. I just had to sit with it. And in a way, that was a blessing because I didn't have time to have that knee-jerk reaction and panic and do panicky things because I was somewhere where I couldn't do it. And when I came back in a few days later, I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. And I just trusted that it was going to work out. Like even when the most horrendous things happen, unless you pass away or something, it eventually works itself out. So I just said, okay, first priority is somewhere to live. And I called one of my clients who is a real estate agent and said, can you help me? And it all worked. It actually all worked out because I think because I just let the pressure drop off, she actually found us a place in 3 days that was perfect. And I've been here now since then. I'm like, wow, that went pretty well. And then I said, okay, second priority is my massage therapy business. I really need a space to do this. So I just sent a call out to my colleagues and I said, I need a space. One of them had a space that was perfect and it wasn't attached to my home anymore. But I'm like, it's a nice space. It's perfect. It's within walking distance. I like it. It's affordable. Okay, check, done. Then I said, okay, what about the other businesses? So my personal training and my yoga, part of it I took online because this was actually pre-COVID, before everybody was Zooming. But I knew what Zoom was and I had been using it for other things. So I said, hey, you guys, what do you think about going online? And they said, okay, sure. They knew that I was getting kicked out. For some of it was easier because they didn't have to try and make it to the studio. Because why do people not go? Because they are home and they're like, oh, I don't want to get dressed and go back out again. But if they can turn on their computer, they'll come to class. And for my personal training, I found a studio that would rent me by the hour for so I was like, so within a few weeks, I kind of went, okay, everything's fine again. But I think what has to happen, like you have to allow yourself that moment of that holy shit moment of what's happening. But you have to give yourself that moment after that to let that panic drop and to let the voice inside of you that tells you all the things that are going to go wrong. You have to give yourself time to turn that voice off or at least turn the volume down and say, instead of spiraling in the things that are going to go wrong, start to think about what we have to do first and look for solutions. So your brain hates unanswered questions. This is how marketers get you, by the way. your brain hates unanswered questions. So if you ask it like, okay, what can I do to help this situation? Your brain will go off and work on it. That's why those aren't you hungry for? Your brain will go, am I? I think I am. I better go get one. That's how marketers get you because they leave an open question and your brain has to solve it. Maybe you should say no to that question, by the way. But that was a moment where I recognized that because I was in this, like part of what I do is get people into a space where when those bumps in the road come, it is going to knock you a little bit off, but you can come back to some kind of center. Like you can come back to a place where you're like, okay, this part's not working very well right now. I'm not going to panic. This is what I'm going to do. And you can move forward instead of just the downward spiral of awfulness. Because as we said, change is going to come. I didn't choose to leave my studio, but I did choose what to do next.
Yes. Yeah. It comes back to, okay, what's the next first step to take
Right.
to start solving this problem and moving forward? And I love that you took advantage of your community that you had. You reached
Yeah.
out to people that could help you in those specific areas.
Right.
And so this sense of community and not doing it alone. And I also love that this story correlated with your pivotal moment in the hospital, right? You got this call when you didn't have the resources to start like trying to problem solve right away. And so you had that time to process and
Yeah.
to think through and to come back to yourself and really listen to
Yeah.
what to be true instead of being reacted in the moment.
And it's not uncommon for people to immediately charge in and start solving things without having a clear idea of what they're trying to do. I was talking to a client this week who she's like, I told her, you're shooting arrows off in every direction, but you don't know what you're aiming at. Let's take a step back first. And I guess it's because I've done it a couple of times now. It's interesting that the universe has organized it so that it happens whether I want it to or not. And maybe that's my lesson. Okay, universe, thanks so much. But giving yourself that ability to have the pause before you charge off to solve it.
Yeah, I like that lesson. So, I guess as we wrap up, can you offer any practical tips or resources for our listeners to help them with working on their mindset around change and around career changing and the
So I
fear?
created this secret in quotation marks podcast called Step Up to Thrive. And it takes you, it's they're little episodes. They're not very long, but it just takes you through an exercise of taking a look at like an honest look at where you are. And I always say, you don't have to show anybody. It's just for you. You can burn it at the end if you want. But by taking that honest look at where you are and then thinking about what you would like your life to look like, that gives you that ability to say, okay, I want something different. What resources will help me to move it? And when do I want to start? So I think no one is ever stuck unless they're in jail. No one is ever stuck where they are. They're just choosing not to move
Yeah.
for whatever myriad of reasons that it is. And it's all individual what the reasons are, but you do have the ability to change something. Like we said, choose the change that you want, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because when you write it down, then you're able to see, okay, I'm at point A. How do I get to point B?
Yeah.
And then you can start constructing some sort of plan, keeping in mind that you're allowing yourself to be flexible with that plan, right? Because
Right.
it's not ever a straight line, but okay, here's a plan. What's the first step towards
Yeah.
moving there?
And I
So,
always tell people only one thing at a time, because
mhm.
if you try to implement a whole handful of things, it's going to overwhelm you even more. So start with one thing and get that going. When you're ready, add another thing. It's
Yeah.
not a race. We're not racing to the
Yeah.
finish line, friends.
Yeah, it really comes back to what we talked about earlier in regards to being curious and
Yeah.
allowing your life to evolve because you are leaning into those curiosities.
So powerful.
Yeah, it really is. Heather, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. If there's anybody interested in working with you or learning more from you or maybe getting the secret podcast,
Your podcast.
how can they find you?
So my website is heatherstewart.coach. That's EWART. I've seen my name spelled many ways. And the podcast, you can actually just grab that at Stepcom. Yeah.
Awesome.
You won't find it on the website. It's a secret. Don't tell anyone.
Thank you again for being here. It was a pleasure. I just really resonated with this conversation today. So thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks so much, Brittany. Have an amazing day.
You too.
Thank you so much for tuning in today, and a huge thank you to our guest for sharing such valuable insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback helps others discover the podcast, and it means the world to me as I continue to bring you content that supports your career change journey. If today's conversation resonated with you and you're feeling stuck in a career that doesn't fulfill you anymore, I'm here to help. My one-on-one career coaching program is designed specifically for women who are ready to break free from the grind and discover a career that truly excites them. In our sessions, we'll uncover what's holding you back, identify your true passions, and create a clear, actionable plan to transition you into a career that aligns with your deepest values. You can get in touch with me directly at shiftyourdayjob@gmail.com, or you can connect with me on social media at shiftyourdayjob. I'd love to hear from you and support you on this journey. Until next time, I'm your host, Brittany Cates, and together, let's shift your day job.